I'd say one is figure out your why
Mm,
it is that you're doing what you're doing and relate it to something bigger than you.
yeah.
It's a big one. Two would be trust yourself. Trust what you're capable of achieving. If other people have done it, you 100% can. You're no less than other people. And three, put in the work. Hard work, nothing beats hard work. And I think that everybody wants an easy way out or a faster way to get riches. It takes effort and understanding that it's a day by day process to achieve massive results.
This is the Fit Investor Podcast, where we talk about how to live a more holistic life of being fit not only financially, but physically and faithfully. We'll be joined by experts in all these areas to share their experiences and actionable and practical tips so that you can be a fit investor too. So now let's join our hosts, Cale Delaney, Wesley Whitehead, and Brenna Carls.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Fit Investor Podcast. I'm your host, Cale Delaney, here with my co-host, Brenna Carls. And today we have a very special guest, Sarah Miskelly. And Sarah and I had actually gotten connected through a mutual friend of ours. So we're happy to have you on, Sarah. And just a real brief bio. Sarah grew up in real estate, helping her dad manage investment properties from a young age. After obtaining her real estate license at 24, she found success quickly, selling over 55 million in real estate and winning the top agent under 30 award 3 years in a row, while also building and managing her multi-seven-figure real estate portfolio. After the birth of her two kids, she shifted to investing full-time, focusing on U.S. multifamily, and she now helps other women specifically create passive income streams and build wealth from real estate investing. She's also the founder of Hylee Capital, which is a real estate investment firm, partnering with industry leaders that brings profitable passive investments to new and seasoned investors. And they've invested in over 10,000 units, representing 400 million in real estate. So that's a very impressive resume, Sarah. I think I told you that one the first time we met. And then I saw how young you were. I was like, my goodness, wow. So I just want to open that up and thank you again for coming on our show here and just tell us a little bit more about yourself. Like, how did you become so accomplished and do all this and still be so young?
I appreciate it. That's very kind of you. And you know what? I was very lucky to have grown up in real estate. Like that, I'd say is the biggest component. My family was in it, but ingrained in me at a young age to grow in this industry. So when I was a kid, I would be helping my dad. I'd be cleaning units, painting them, taking checks to the bank, a little kid walking into the bank, but I was ingrained to learn this lifestyle from a young age. So from there, it just made sense to get into real estate sales. And I also got a very strong work ethic as a child, and I think that was what had me move farther faster, essentially. I had some really good support.
Yeah. No, I love that because oftentimes you hear that kids who grew up with parents who are in a business or who are in real estate, I think especially if it was more so like on a smaller scale, tend to actually go away from it because they see more so a lot of the time the struggles and how hard it is instead of all the benefits that it can have. And so I've seen that a lot where people like, I just saw how my parents complained about it all the time, or they had to go fix this in the middle of the night. I never want to do that. Whereas I'm not sure if you saw all the down and dirty side of it either when you were growing up, but what was it about growing up with the real estate that intrigued you or that made you wanted to continue in that path?
I think I saw the benefits in the sense that my dad worked so hard, but we also got to spend a lot of time in the summer in Croatia for 2 months and play and enjoy the beautiful lifestyle that it did create. So it was work hard when you need to and then enjoy the benefits. So I think I had a really good full picture of what was possible in this median. And also, I think mentally, I wasn't in that culture of complaining about the efforts, right? Wasn't around me. It was just do what needs done and keep moving.
No, that's awesome. So Croatia, what is there a link with Croatia or
Just gonna My dad's Croatian.
okay.
Yeah. So he was Croatian, classic immigrant story, was there and then came to Canada for a better life, was an electrician, and then he got into purchasing properties where he'd house hack, which is now the modern term. It wasn't called that back then. It was live in one unit, fix the place up, and live in another unit. So that was what how he built his portfolio and that I had that foundation to build on for myself.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, I think that's wonderful. Again, I think the goal with most of us when we get into the real estate or a business venture as an entrepreneur is to have that freedom and flexibility to do those things like that, where, like you said, you can take 2 months and go to another country and live there and have those experiences, or travel more, or buying back your time, more or less, is the phrase that's out there a lot. So that's awesome that you get to experience that growing up. And now you're taking that another step further and bringing that for your family as well, which is wonderful. So tell us about your family. You have 2 children, right?
Yeah, so I have a 11-month-old daughter, Hypatia, and then I have a 3-year-old son, Leonardo. They finally got into childcare. So now I'm able to focus back on growing my wealth and my business, and especially working with women. I think this season of life has really demonstrated to me what a woman kind of deals with in life with having kids and stuff. And I found it personally very challenging because I grew up working hard and wanting to build a business and being ambitious. And I
Mm,
got myself out of that. And I really got more connected to who I wanna help to generate passive income from real estate, and I think that women now are more coming into that season where they have the capital to invest, and they may not necessarily know where to invest, and that's where I'm at right now, and I think that actually came about. I got more connected to it from having kids and going through that experience, so
mm.
it was there's some meaning to everything, right?
No, absolutely. Absolutely. And you, like we touched on in your bio, you built your portfolio, a sizable portfolio, while raising your 2 kids. How did you do that? Like, what was your why, or what was your reason to really bust your butt and say, hey, just because I'm a mom doesn't mean I can't do this as well?
Yeah, so I think I started before I had kids, essentially. I'm now 34, so when I was 24, that's when I got into real estate sales. And I think that time of life, reflecting back, I had so much time, right? I had the time to commit 100% to my goal. And my goal, I remember having it on a whiteboard in my office. I said I want to make 400K a year by 30. That was my sales goal. And being pulled in by a goal, I think really motivated me to just hustle every day. And I didn't have many barriers to stop me in that stage of life. So I was able to accelerate my income, and I had that investing mindset from growing up in real estate to really look at where I can allocate my capital appropriately to build wealth. And my secondary goal was I wanted to be able to, when I had kids, have that passive income coming in to be able to spend time with them. Cause I always hear those stories about not having enough time with your kids or regretting not spending time with them when they're younger. And I was like, I'm not doing that. I'm going to make sure I set myself up. So my 20s were a huge, aggressive, work oriented period of life to get me to where I am now in my 30s with my kids.
So how old are your kids?
They are 11 months and 3.
Aw, okay. So you haven't quite
Yeah.
started teaching them about investing yet.
Oh,
Not yet, but they will learn.
Yes,
Everything I hated doing when I was a kid that my dad made me do, you
you're gonna
better
make them
believe
do.
doing them to my kid. Yeah, 100%. Yeah,
my 3-year-old's bedtime stories are real estate books and investing books.
exactly.
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
I'm
my,
hoping that sinks in.
yeah, no, when I was a kid, I remember reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I was like, I don't even know how old I was. It was ridiculous. And hey, look, it must have worked, right?
Stories. I'm gonna tell you a scary story tonight. This person wanted to buy an investment property, but their debt to income ratio was too high.
Yes, just sneak in, like, the important stuff in between a story. Hey, storytelling works, right? We all know that now. So just sneak it in there.
Oh, gosh. So what I find really cool and inspiring about what you just talked about is you in your 20s, when most of us are certainly not in the mindset of really thinking about the future, frankly, you were doing that. You were setting a goal for your future self, for when you have a family, when you have children, and you work towards that when you had in the best time of your life, when you didn't have all of those burdens or those additional things to worry about, so that you could set yourself up so that when you do have them, you don't need to worry about them again. Versus, which is like the complete opposite of what most everybody does. For me, I'll just say I didn't do that. I did a lot of smart things when I was younger too, but it was a much longer path. And then it was like, I got to when I was 36 or whatever it was and saying, okay, I can't deal with this anymore. I need to make a change. And then bust my butt really hard for a couple of years and break free and move on. I wish I had done something more like you. What do you think it was just the experience of growing up, or was there something, the people that you were surrounded with that really helped you have that mindset at such a young age?
I think it was had a liminal moment when I was 16, my dad passed away. So he was my kind of guiding force, my guiding light. And when that happened, I had to, in my mind, prove myself, right? Prove that I was skilled on my own and I could achieve success. But I think that there was always challenges. Like everything's going to look rosier from the outside looking in when you see the numbers and everything that I've accomplished. But I had my challenges, right? Like when he passed away, I got an inheritance and made some bad investments because I didn't have that right guidance and support. So we all fail forward, right? I think that the biggest thing is just taking on what you have. And I still have, even Kale, like what you're saying, I still say, oh, I should have done more. I should have been this. I should have been that. So I think no matter what, we're going to have those voices in our heads and question where we are. But the reality is, we are where we are and you can't escape yourself. So you just have to take what you have at that time and make the best of it. So when I was younger and he passed away, I said to myself, I really need to learn about investing more, grow. And like I said, I made some mistakes there, made some bad investments. But I think all of that, now that I'm here, makes me realize how there's a missing for women, especially to get that proper guidance and support when they are even making good money. I started making good money in my 20s from sales. And I had to figure out ways to invest it. And I look back too and I say, oh, I wish I had better places to invest it, or I wish I had more money now. It's endless. The
Right.
self-talk is endless no matter where somebody's at, and I think I've now gotten to a point where I can see that, and I just have to focus on what I feel like God is calling me to do and what I feel like my strengths are, and that's where I am now, basically.
No, that's wonderful.
Awesome.
And you mentioned this a couple times in terms of, actually, before we jump into that, I want to just ask you, do you mind sharing like one of your experiences with your a bad investment, like what happened, what you learned?
Yeah, great question. So I find that let's just put it clearly, I had some money, right? And I was like, where do I go to invest this? I knew I loved real estate. I grew up in it, but I also, being young, I was like, where can I make more? Where can I get a higher return? I think that greed showed up a little bit. And so I went to the first people that came across my like plate as an investment opportunity, and I trusted them without doing the proper due diligence. I just saw, okay, they're saying that this is how things work. So I put money into it and that didn't turn out right. Like they got into some lawsuits, the money returns got delayed. It was really stressful. Whereas if I had have asked the proper questions or really understood the dynamics of how investing really works, rate of return, even basic things people don't know, like the basics, rate of return, IR, where is the money being allocated? What is the structure for repayment? What is your track record? It's all those questions I wish I would have asked that I'm now making sure that I
Mm,
educate people on asking so that better questions get better answers at
right.
the end of the day. So knowing that now, I'm looking at the things that I invest in and I'm asking those questions to make sure that there's always risk with investing. I think we all know that, but you can probably mitigate that risk by working with the right people. Right.
And educating yourself. Yeah.
Mm,
Speaking of educating,
exactly.
so I know you're in Toronto. So how is it different from the United States? Because I'd like to know about, what your numbers are, your initial return on investment, or what your cash on cash return percentages are for the Toronto or wherever you invest in Canada, as opposed compared to the United States. So are you doing long-term rentals? Are you doing short-term rentals? Are you doing both? And what do you like to see in for example, short-term rental return up there or a long-term rental?
Yeah, so the challenge with the Toronto market specifically, and we don't even have to look at Canada and the US, you can just look at major metropolitan areas. Toronto here, we have very high appreciation, or we've had very high appreciation historically for a long time. So people have done very well in this market. However, we're all seeing a shift in the market, no matter where you are. It's just that we also have a very bureaucratic management of investment and rental properties here. So my asset, for example, here I have a fiveplex, and if I have tenants that move in, they're rent controlled. So they will move in and they'll let's say, stay for 5, 6 years, I can maybe raise the rent $40, but my insurance costs are going up. Any costs we've all seen the last few years, the cost of materials going up, the cost of labor, all of that is increasing. However, my rents are stagnating essentially. And it's also very challenging to remove a tenant. All of the rules are very much in place. So that affects my returns naturally. And the cost to enter the market is also very high. So in my city, for example, for somebody to purchase a 1 bedroom condo, that would be about in the downtown core, maybe 7 to 800,000 Canadian dollars. Yeah. And rent on that would be about 2,500. But you just have to look at the numbers there. It's not really you're not cash flow positive.
Okay.
Most of the investors in the Toronto market, historically, what they've done, and this is all coming from, I was also in the sales, right? Real estate sales. So I was working with people acquiring assets, first time home buyers, not a lot of investors, a lot of first time home buyers getting into the market. They all use parents' money to get in because they can't afford it. But any investor coming in, they were purchasing properties in Toronto for essentially just the appreciation. They're banking on appreciation, and they would essentially be hoping that they would cash flow if they could keep paying down that mortgage more quickly, but they'd also be putting in their own money, 5 or 600 bucks, and just saying, okay, it's going to appreciate so greatly over the next few years that I can refi and then get that cash out, or I could sell for a great profit. And let me tell you, people did. When the market was hot, people were selling for
Mhm.
astronomical figures. But right now, what we're seeing is the market's slowed down. It's still appreciating, but cost of borrowing went up. So people can't really do the HELOC strategy where they're getting their funds out and investing it. So I did a lot of private lending myself. That's how I was getting some passive income. And I get maybe 10% on a private mortgage. And that's maybe gone down to 8% now. And I was leveraging to do that. But now the delta is just not there. So the market's just shifting. Like you can still do private lending and get maybe like 16% if it's unsecured. You just have to really find those deals. But I'd say the challenge for somebody new getting into it is that's scary, right? You don't really
Right.
understand the process, and anything private, people are like, oh my God, it's shady. And like it can be, but you have to be careful. So that's why I personally am looking into the US. The US is just much, much bigger. That's it. It's just a lot larger. There's a lot more opportunity. In Toronto, we can still do short term like Airbnb. There are huge opportunities to do that, but also there's a lot of rules. So right now they're implementing changes where it can only be your primary residence. Like you can't Airbnb like an investment property. There's regulations on how many months it can be rented out. So I just find the regulatory environment is very restrictive here. And I think that happens in a lot of cities. That's why I know, Kale, you have to go and be very specific on where you're running your operations. I think you mentioned Florida was becoming challenging, if I remember correctly. So that's why I've moved into the States just for opportunity. And not even at this point, like the most aggressive returns. I'm looking for stability and also returns that are still a little bit more favorable. I don't need crazy returns. I just want them to be protected. That's why I went into multifamily because it's more economies of scale, right?
So you're now purchasing in the United States as well.
Yeah, the US.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. So a lot of good things that I share with this. The one thing, like you were explaining towards the end, which I think is an important thing that people need to hear again, is you said, okay, I live in Toronto. I've invested here before, but I'm seeing that it's not exactly the best place to invest anymore, at least for my criteria and my goals. So I'm going to look elsewhere, not even in another city or country or state, anything in another country. A lot of people, especially newer people getting into investing, are really scared of looking outside of their hometown.
Yeah.
And I, like you mentioned, I do own some stuff locally. And right, that's when I first got started. I was the same. I was like, let me just look locally. But then I quickly moved on to some places, other states that were offering much better returns and much better situations. And I prefer remote investing much more than investing locally. I think one of the benefits is it forces you to set up some better systems, especially if, like me, you're like a do it yourself type person. Whereas if you have something locally, you're going to be tempted to go try to fix something yourself to save that $100 or whatever it is when you just wasted 5 hours of your time trying to do it. Right. Which is not the best use of your time. So that was one of the appeals to me, was just, okay, let me force myself in a situation to set up better systems and processes to leverage and use other people instead of wasting my time on these tasks that I shouldn't be doing. So you took it again a whole nother level in terms of investing in another country. What gave you the comfort level in doing something like that? Because even for me, again, that kind of sounds a little bit scary of, wow, I'm in another country. There's different laws and rules and that type of thing. So what gave you that comfort level of being able to make that leap?
I think seeing other people doing it and also having that trust in myself and belief in myself where I can acknowledge like they're not different from me. If I've achieved XYZ, that means I can achieve like the next thing. That's just how I frame it. And when you start to see that other people are doing things in certain areas, you can follow their model. Nothing I'm doing is revolutionary, if we're perfectly honest. It's just I see that other people are able to do it. And then we're in such an interconnected world like podcasting or going on forums and meetup communities, conferences. There's so many ways to integrate yourself into those communities and just elevate yourself. So I had mentors who are in real estate, they were investing in Belize, they were investing in the US. I started spending more time there as well, just because my family, we go to Florida sometimes, and I started to integrate there. And I started to realize that like everywhere is the same. There's not, Toronto's not like some different place. You go to a city, there's the same dynamics at play. There's just some areas that have better profitability or whatever. So I think that was what really helped me is just trusting myself, but also seeing that it's possible. I would say that's the biggest factors.
Well, no, that's exactly it. Another common phrase that gets put out there is success leaves clues, right? And you don't need to reinvent the wheel in any of these industries or spaces. And frankly, sometimes it's better not to reinvent the wheel. Let's focus and let's follow a successful pattern that has been repeated over and over again, the old tried and true method. But I think even more so is just, from everything you've talked about so far, you have a very, I don't know, you have a very good mindset. Let's put it that way. Again, starting from when you were setting these goals at an early age, setting yourself up for the future, believing in yourself now when you're taking these next steps to get to the next level. I think that's something that a lot of people, including myself, struggle with is especially when you get to maybe a certain level of success and that kind of like that imposter syndrome kind of creeps in. Did you have that experience as well?
Oh my God, I have all of it, like, all the time, like, all the time. That's why it's, like, not I don't ever think, "Oh, I'm, like, better this or that." All those experiences are in our mind, but everything exists in action, right?
Mm,
It's always the actions that we're doing. And so that's what I find is every time I have these thoughts and stuff, I just look at what are my goals? What do I want to achieve? Am I capable of it? Yes. And this has been years. I've done so much personal development work. I used to take like courses at Landmark Education. I would assist on programs there. So I've done like years of personal development work, all the books, all this stuff, and also integrating in those communities. Like my husband is also was a leader at a personal development company. Like we are very integrated in that world.
mm,
And I find that's foundational way of being will then translate into your activities.
mm.
So it's not, it may look or seem a certain way like it's easy, but it took work to even think a certain way, if that makes sense. Like it's really understanding that changing the way you think is then going to translate into everything that you do every day.
Absolutely, 100%. So, can you put you on the spot a little bit, but with the personal development, can you think of we like to go in threes. So, can you think of three actionable tips related to personal development that can help people work on their mindset?
Yeah. So figure out one would be figure out what's blocking you. Like what happened to make you the way you are, essentially. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but just really get to that foundational knowledge of how can you operate at a higher level and stop the things that are in your way. And then two, be systematic about those improvements. It takes work like habits to train yourself to improve a way of thinking, just same way with fitness or anything in life, you need to do it repeatedly to improve. And that takes effort. So you
Mm,
have to do the work essentially. And then three, I'd say is once you've seen yourself achieve some of those results, you have to as well look and acknowledge the impact and the difference that you've actually done for yourself and take those actions again and again and trust yourself to keep improving, right? Because you've proved to yourself that you can. So I think it's like phases of growth. And a lot of it actually translate if you are in business and there's actually tangible changes that are happening, not just the airy fairy mental changes. It's like in real life, if you can see that you're making more money. Look, making more money in my mind, I don't really care so much about the money, although like I love money, like who doesn't? But it's more just, oh, can I do that? Because for me to make 400K a year, I had to become a different person.
Mm.
So I really try and look at it like that. Like right now, my goal is to have a 10 million net worth by 40. That's my goal. I have it on my whiteboard. And who I have to become to achieve that is a daily process.
Mm.
So that's how I like to break things down. The airy fairy woo woo mental stuff with like tangible goal setting is big for me.
I
I like that you put how you're like, I have to look at what I've accomplished so far because what a lot of people I see do is I do it. So I'm thinking about myself as well when I say this. You know where you want to be, and you're like, oh, it seems so far to get there, and I'm that imposter syndrome where you go to a conference or something and you see somebody else that's just like very well established, and somebody says, "Oh, I've got 35 doors and I did it in 2 years," and I'm like, what? And so when you look at that, you have to look at actually what you have done, not like all the likes that you've gotten on Facebook or whatever, like you closing a deal, but what you have actually done to obtain that long term goal. And so I think if we keep our mindset on, what, I've already hit these marks that I'm needing to hit to get to that long term goal, I need to focus on the prize basically instead of wondering what else everybody else is doing and comparing myself to everybody else. Cause I think that slows down some people because they get discouraged and some people honestly get out of the business because we all know that social media is fluff. And I try to post on there like real stuff so people know like it's not all rainbow farts and sprinkles. I don't know if I can say that I guess I can say that on here. But the thing is, it's like, it's not like that. They're just posting the good stuff. They're not posting like having to scrape tile floor off of this floor and sitting on it and getting a bruise sitting on your knees and cleaning. Like they're not posting all of that. And so you have to really take what's social media is showing and what people are saying with a fine tooth comb and just focus and have that tunnel vision of your goals to reach it. And I think it seems like you're really doing that. So that's awesome.
Yeah, like, and more money, more problems. Like, it's like the thing is, you think I think I have this perspective now where I look at people who've achieved a lot, and when you just bring it down, like they're dealing with bigger business problems. They're dealing with more financial issues. And I'm not to diminish it and say, oh, life is like harder. Cause yeah, it's great. They've accomplished a lot, but just looking at no matter where you go in life, like you're gonna have problems. They just
Right.
get bigger. And it's not to romanticize that, like in a sense, romanticize being that speaker on stage or romanticizing. I can still have a goal to do that, which I do, but I don't think that life will be better there. It really is like it's the journey I'm finding is where things get like exciting and it's those challenges that are motivating. And if you can just focus on, like you said, focus on yourself and what you're up to and what matters to you and what you feel like your mission is in life and why you're here, essentially, that is enough.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. And with your goal setting, do you set your goal if I want to have a net worth of 10 million by 40. So do you then back into that and set your I don't know, I guess like intermediate goals or step by step based on, okay, if I want to be that, then I have to do this today. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do a lot of that stuff.
Okay.
So I'm in a business coaching program right now called Strategic Coach, and we work in 90-day cycles. So we go in every 90 days and we do goal setting for all the things you want to accomplish in a week, in a day, like really break it down. And then in terms of the sales side, because when I'm raising capital for multifamily deals, when you really break it down, when I was a realtor, that's sales. When I'm raising capital, I'm still generating leads in producing investment opportunities for them, right? And what I have to work on is okay, like how many, if I have a goal to raise $1 million in capital, I have to break that down to how many phone calls do I have to have? How many investment appointments do I have to have? What is my conversion ratio? What is my gross commission income? There's so many criteria and metrics that I use and operate by. So when I have a big financial goal, I need to break down very tangibly day to day, week by week, month by month, year by year, how I'm gonna get there.
No, that's awesome. That's one thing that right now, that's one of the struggles I have right now is with goal setting. I've never been one to really set concrete goals. And I'm at a stage in life now and a certain level of success that I really need to, though, because I'm recently left the W-2 and corporate world just towards the end of last year. So relatively recent and new full-time entrepreneur. And it is definitely different. And it is definitely hard to now be the sole source of my routine, my discipline. And there's a lot of days that go by where I'm like, and still right now, where I'm putting off a lot of things because I'm like, yeah, gosh, I just don't want to do that. And I know there's no immediate consequences for not doing it. But in the back of my head, I know that it's coming, like it's coming down the road. And if I don't start working on it, I'm going to be regretting it later. And so that's something I need to really work on because again, I have like these, yeah, just very non-specific goals. Let's put it that way. And so it lacks clarity. And what you do, you break it down. You just broke it down and these super minute details of exactly what I need to do that's going to get me there. That's perfect. That's exactly what people need to do because, yeah, when you're like me and you have these superfluous goals, it's you can be very ambiguous and not get much done, right? But when you have these set, clear direction, if I didn't make this number of phone calls for the past week, man, I know that I'm behind. So now I need to step it up this week and get back on track to my goals. So I just think that's, again, worth repeating and for everyone to hear, and for myself too, how important goal setting and being very clear and strategic about it is. Again, just kudos to you for having that mindset and setting yourself up and putting yourself in the environments where you have accountability for that too. Like you mentioned, your mentorship program that you're a part of, you've plugged yourself into these various communities and things like that. So I think that's another huge aspect is, yeah, having that community or putting yourself in situations where you are going to be held accountable.
Yeah, for sure. Surrounding yourself with people who are in similar conversations or up to bigger things, or like you said, keep you on track. I've done so much work on that too, like the personal development, but also the coaching side. I always had a sales coach when I was a realtor, and that helped me accelerate my income. And I'm just translating that now to investing because a lot of these skills are transferable in one
Yep.
industry to the next. Yeah.
And
So I
now,
think like why people kill, and I'm the same way, and I don't know if this is you, but it's if you don't write down the actual goals that you have, it's like you can't fail at it because it's not written down and not set in stone. And so you're like, oh, I'll get to it. I haven't written it down yet. I haven't like a diet. You're like, oh, I'll start after the weekend and stuff like that. And that's when I'm going to commit. And so you don't feel bad about gorging yourself over the weekend with food. But with you, and I know you said, Sarah, that, you have a coaching thing and everything. What have you ever is there something that you really wanted to reach and you haven't reached it yet? Or what do you tell people that come to you and say, you know what, I want to do this, but I'm scared to write it down because I'm scared I'm going to fail and not reach that goal?
yeah,
A great question. So if somebody came to me and said they were scared they can't reach a goal, my first question would be like, what are you scared of? Just like really getting into the inquiry of what is that thing that's holding you back and just let somebody free flow and share what that thing is. And over more questions being asked, getting to the core issue and then having somebody recognize that it's just made up, right? We just
Mhm.
make up all these things every day in our head. I'm thinking of things like I make up all the time. Oh, like I'm not good enough, or now I'm like in my 30s, right? So I'm like, oh, I wish I had done what I'm doing now when I was like 25. I have it too, you know what I mean? But it's all these just ideas in my head and really understanding that and being like, there's actually nothing in reality holding you back and having that kind of be the frame of reference for what you take. And you have to remind yourself every day. None of this is like,
Right.
it's not easy, but it's doable.
My thought process is to try to get myself out of it. And maybe this will help you write yours down. Is that I might fail at what I initially set to do, but the thing is, I'm failing at something I love and I'm learning. And so you can fail. I failed at jobs I hate. Like I loathe. I waited tables all throughout college and in my singing career and all that stuff, and I hated it. And it wasn't something I loved, and I still would fail if I got in the weeds, they say, with 4 tables that sat and so it's like you can fail at something you hate, so why not possibly fail at something you love? And really, you're probably not gonna fail if you give it your all.
right.
Exactly.
Yeah. Or phrase that you had mentioned earlier, Sarah, fail forward, right?
Yeah.
Even if you do fail in pursuing something, you've still made progress, right?
Mhm.
You've progress, you still learned, and that can leverage you for taking things again to the next level. And there's so much I want to ask, but I think maybe that's a good point to integrate the faith aspect a little bit, because we're talking about this like self-talk and self-doubt and confidence imposter syndrome and all this stuff. And it's my belief that a lot of this comes from the father of lies, Satan. There is spiritual warfare that is going on all around us and within each one of us. And these self doubts, these fears, these things that we're hearing about ourselves, all these negative things, these don't come from our Father God. He is not there sitting wanting us to fail, right? He wants us to move forward, to be prosperous, to be joyful in life, and enjoy being stewards of what he's giving us. Who can all this self talk be coming from? We know it's not from him, so it can only be coming from the father of lies himself. So that's another thing that I try to look at when these things come to me is that, okay, I understand that God wants what's best for me, which that doesn't mean necessarily financial success or whatever, but maybe that's a better balance in life. Maybe that's getting over whatever other obstacles I'm looking at or facing. He doesn't want me to stagnate, to not be a good steward of the things that he's provided for me. So that's like another motivation that I try to think of when I get into that bad self-talk. Just want to get what your opinion on that or your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so I'm so happy you brought it up because I find my faith as being such a pillar in how I operate in life and with my family and in business. And I really found a lot of strength and I go to church every Sunday. I bring my son to like the youth area, e-kids, and I always listen to sermons in my car or when I'm feeling an area of doubt or if I'm having issue with somebody else, I try and look at what is the message that I need to have here to support me. So I'm always looking for support outside at some level, but I look for me as support is church, right? And my faith. And I really have to then look at those things that are in my heart are calling me to do, really focusing on that and saying, "Okay, that's what God wants me to do." I really have a very strong belief in the things that I'm up to in business right now, like anything that's like pushing me forward and that's helping others, that's from God and I need to just keep like doubling down on that and use like scripture and church to emphasize that voice and make it louder than the outside voices because it's not just those. I think the challenge here now, and I always feel cliche saying it because like in every generation, they have challenges and media of different sorts. Like, I'm sure in the 1920s, somebody's, "Oh, the newspaper will ruin us all." You know what I mean? I don't actually know, but I find, yes, to say it, I find that the voices are so loud now and they're in our ear, they're on our phone, they're all around us. And it takes extra effort to carve out that voice of ancient wisdom, essentially. Where what every time you listen to it, things go right, like in reality, right? So I think that for me is really important to daily bring myself back. So whether that's yeah, like listening to a sermon or reading my Bible app, I do that every day and really try and think of how what I'm doing is bringing me closer to, I guess, being a voice for that in the world, like the positive, the more moral kind of conversations. So it's integrated in a sense in what I'm doing every day.
And how, for example, with your business, like how do you feel that your faith impacts that? Or do you do certain things within your business to reflect your faith or anything like that?
Yeah, so I think my business at the season it's at right now is actually all coming from my faith. So I used to pray and be like, God, help me figure out like what my like mission is in life or like how can I help people? And I tried a bunch of things. Like I tried to do charity work and I tried to like volunteer, like things, but it never felt right. And then I felt bad because it didn't feel right. Cause I'm like, that's how you help people. And then what I really got is what I'm naturally talented at and what feels like the lowest barrier and what I've seen success in through the evidence is the thing that I've been given as my God-given talent to share. And for me, it's like I have this huge real estate background. I'm okay talking to people. Like I am not scared to get into conversations and share what I'm up to. And now after having kids, like I mentioned, I feel really connected to women specifically. So right now I'm like, okay, these are all the things that feel really right. And I feel like that's God being like, this is what you're supposed to be doing because there's not a pull when you're in a job. And like you were saying, you had a job and you hated it and it just feels icky all the time and it's so stressful. There's somebody else probably in that job that's this is the best thing. I love
Yeah.
it. Even when they feel challenged being a server, even they're like, but I love it. And servers, if you have a great server, it changes your day. You know what I mean? For me, I'm like right now, I feel like God's been pulling me to work with women and help them build their wealth through real estate because I was blessed with growing up in it. And I feel like I can relate to them. So I find at some level when you can really integrate your faith and really look at what are those things you feel called to do
Mhm.
and use that calling to support others. So for me, I'm like, maybe I am not going to be a volunteer at a food bank, but if I can really accelerate my income, there's a charity that I want to donate to right now, and I do donate to is God Behind Bars. And that brings Christ into the prisons. And they have an app, the Pando app, that brings sermons into prisons. For some reason, that really called to me. And now I make sure I donate monthly to it. And one of my goals is to raise $1 million for God Behind Bars. That's one of my big business goals, but that's from being in business, right? So that's where I've learned to pull it in and relates what I want to give back to what I'm up to a little bit better.
I love that so much. We're talking about somewhat similar on another episode previously, and we were talking about that, just like you said, not everyone is called to be a missionary. Not everyone is called to be a volunteer or a pastor or a teacher, and the scripture even says that. So finding, like you said, what your God-given talent is and using the signs that you see in your life to help clarify and validate that, finding, yeah, what doesn't feel icky to you, what doesn't feel like it's a burden, even though it might be challenging or stressful or hard, it's not a burden to you. And then focusing on that and growing that. And now how can that pair or match, or how can I best steward that talent into something in furthering God's kingdom? Yeah, maybe it is being a very successful business person and utilizing that success to do something amazing, like raise $1 million for this charity. You don't have to be the person that's running the charity or the person that's preaching within in the prisons. You can support that person because that's that person's calling, right? That's what they excel at. You excel at this. Let's partner, just like in real estate, right? Let's partner together, and now your talent and that person's talent all of a sudden become this great union to further God's kingdom. So I think that's really a beautiful thing to hear because, especially in business, the faith aspect and a lot of things in life today, the faith aspect gets left at the door. Or when people become successful, others can look at it and think, okay, must be nice, or they're just greedy, or this or that or the other thing, without seeing that being successful in and of itself or being wealthy or whatever is not an evil thing. Scripture even says it's not money that's evil. It's the love of money that's the root of all evil, right? So if you're successful and you're using that wealth to further God's kingdom, that's a beautiful thing that needs to happen in this world. I think that's an awesome thing that you said and brought some clarity to there. So I love that a lot. And God Behind Bars, I'm going to have to check that out. That sounds like a
Yeah.
really cool ministry there. Can you tell us a little bit about your faith journey? When did you become a Christian? Did you grow up in a Christian household, or just what was your faith journey like?
It was always sprinkled around. Like my dad, every time we drive by the church, he would always do this right in front of, right? So it was always around, but it wasn't emphasized. Like sometimes we go to church on Sundays as more of a time with him. Like we just casually go, but it wasn't like strict every Sunday. But I found I came back to faith when I was a realtor in my 20s. I think because I was just having like challenges of work and I really was looking for something more. It was calling me. Like I don't know how to describe it. And I actually had a realtor friend who posted that she was at Elevation Church. And I just asked her if I could go with her one Sunday. And I ended up from there, I fell in love with the pastor, not fell in love, but like I really liked the pastor. I liked how he spoke. I liked just the way that it was. We're in Toronto and the church isn't even there. We'd go in and it was just a screen and it'd be broadcasting from, I think, South North Carolina.
Mm.
And I started to make it a habit and I really enjoyed it. And I found it just I started to see changes in my life and improvements. And I started bringing people to church, friends from fellow realtors would start coming with me to church. And from there, like I said, I made it important in my life. So I made an effort to always be there.
Wonderful. Wonderful. So that was in your mid-20s. Is there a time that you can think where it became a real personal thing now instead of like, I think a lot of people, we start out with that kind of that head knowledge about it as we learn about it, but it may not have that personal relationship with Jesus or that connection. Was there like a specific time where I was like, okay, now this is real for me. Now this is personal.
Yeah, like a few times. So I remember one time when I actually felt like I was drinking too much. So I was like, oh, I'm going to go to AA. And so I went, and it's all based on, they're like, God is going to help you through this. And that for me was honestly like, it was like I felt called to change my habits. And I found like so much strength from going in that community and just getting more connected to something else. And then as well, when I had like relationship issues, for example, I remember just looking at, okay, what does it mean to really forgive someone? And in those instances, I started to really buckle down on the moral principles of faith, right? Where what is the result I can get through forgiveness? And then actually seeing the evidence of things in reality, I feel like that was always what really brought me closer to God. It's every time where I felt like really challenged in life and I like brought it to like God and I used those principles, I
Mm,
saw improvements. And
mm,
I think the more evidence I had for that, it really just strengthened my faith in a sense.
mm,
And instead of then coming to that when I had issue, I started to look at how can I lead my life through the principles. So being more like proactive versus reactive, if that makes sense. And that's just being like a progressive growth. And now that's where I'm always going there first when I'm challenged.
mm. That's wonderful. Steve Harvey, do you know who Steve Harvey is? The comedian?
Yeah, yeah. Oh, he's great. Yeah.
Yeah. He has a podcast I listen to every now and then. And I just remember one quote that he said was, let me see if I can get it right here. We need to stop telling God how big our problems are and start telling our problems how big our God is. And
Mhm.
I was like, man, that's so true. Like how, how much in our prayer lives are we just complaining, really, right? God, help me with this or help me with that or this, all this other stuff. And when we should be doing the exact opposite, right? God, thank you for giving me the abilities or the disciplines to get to where I am now, to know that I can overcome. We fall into these, again, getting into that self talk and all these self doubts, those negative thought patterns, and doing things the opposite way of really what we should be doing to really make progress. So that just reminded me of that when you were talking about that. Another thing that I thought was really cool that you brought up is you had decided to go to church or take that action at least to go to church by just seeing a post from a friend about going to church. And then you go to church, you start inviting friends and coworkers there. You now integrate this into your business, into your family, all the impacts that that one person's post, frankly, had that butterfly effect of all these things now that are going on that shoot, when you accomplish that goal of raising $1 million for God Behind Bars, that can be traced back to this one post from a friend. And I try to think about stuff like that too, because I listen to a lot of podcasts, but I was listening to another one, the Ed Milet show, and he was talking about a similar thing in that we never know, and we may never know the impact of the things that we do, right? We may never see, your friend may never, I don't know, may not know all the things that have happened since then. But we need to keep planting those seeds, right? Because that's really what our job is, right? Our job is not to necessarily even grow those seeds. Frankly, that's really God's job. Our job is to continue to plant those seeds, continue to take those little actions because we don't know what those impacts are going to be. We don't know who that's going to affect and what chain reaction that's going to set in place. I just thought that was another cool link to see how that kind of chain of events happened in your life there.
That's a great reminder, actually. I'm like, I need to post more going to church.
Again, you never know. And it's just, that's one of the reasons that we wanted to create this podcast too, is because it's so, again, with the way society is now, it's just, unfortunately, God is being pulled out of everything. And Christians, just as much as everybody else, are surrendering to that, right? Not as many people are making a stand for it. Not as many people are being outspoken because there's fear of repercussions, or this person's not going to like me, or all this stuff that goes on today. And so we all need a reminder, and we all need an encouragement to stand up again and speak out for our faith, and just put ourselves out there, and kind of accountability again, like we were talking about earlier. For me, this is a little bit of an accountability thing to remind myself that, hey, you are a Christian, right? So it's your responsibility to make that known, to put that out there, to work for God's kingdom. So you better do it, right? So yeah, it's just anything that we can start doing to bring that back out and plant those seeds. It's our responsibility, frankly, to start doing that again.
Yeah. Amen.
Thank you. I'll get off my soapbox.
No, it's great.
I feel like when you start saying stuff, Kill, I want to be like, I want to just start like humming an inspiration, come to the altar song in the background.
There you go. You should start doing that. That can be a new add to the.
No.
So we are getting to the end here. So I do want to be respectful of your time and want to try to wrap this up a little bit here. One of the things we like to ask is, again, we go in threes. So can you think of 3 actionable tips for our audience? And it can be all about finance, all about faith, or a combination, or whatever, but just 3 actionable tips from your life and your experience that you would like to share with our audience on growing in these areas.
Yes, I'd say 1 is figure out your why it is that you're doing what you're doing, and relate it to something bigger than you. It's a big one. 2 would be trust yourself. Trust what you're capable of achieving. If other people have done it, you 100% can. You're no less than other people. And 3, put in the work. Hard work. Nothing beats hard work. And I think that everybody wants an easy way out or a faster way to get riches. It takes effort and understanding that it's a day by day process to achieve massive results.
Very good. Very good. What I've heard throughout this entire time we've been talking, it just resoundingly is your commitment to discipline, your commitment to bettering yourself through personal development, your goal setting and breaking that down into very clear and actionable steps. And it's very clear in your life of how you've now, after talking with you, of how you've accomplished what you've accomplished. Right. Again, when we first talked that first time, and I read your bio and everything, I'm just being honest. I was a little intimidating. I was like, oh my gosh, who am I talking to here? But after hearing about this again, it makes it all understandable and relatable. And we can see clearly how you've accomplished what you've accomplished in a short time frame. And that's a big kudos to you, because everybody has the same opportunities. In a sense, like we all have opportunities that come our way, right? It's a matter of what we do with them. It's a matter of if we take action or if we don't. You've taken action and it's been fruitful for you. So again, kudos to you. You've done an excellent job. Like, really wonderful to see how successful you've gotten. And I wish you the best success in reaching your goal of raising this $1 million for God Behind Bars. And it's a great goal. So really awesome. Really appreciate your time and talking with us here. And Brenna, do you have any final things you want to say?
What is your most favorite pizza you've ever had in your life, and why?
You're so funny. Okay, so I love carbs. So,
Yes.
I just love if it's like truffle mushrooms and it has like really good olive oil on it and like a nice white sauce and maybe some arugula. Oh my gosh, why'd you have to get me started on this? I'm like, it's lunchtime.
I know.
And anything in Italy, like anything in Italy is you'll just die, go to heaven. Like it's the best pizza in
I haven't
Italy.
been there
Oh my
yet,
God.
and that's like my bucket
you gotta
list. I really
go.
want to go. I will sit there. I will eat chicken and like just chicken for a whole 2 weeks to lose the weight, just to go and just pig out the whole 2 weeks of Italy or something like
For sure.
Awesome. Okay, that's all I have.
Yeah, even that pizza description was super detailed. Look at that.
Yeah.
Down
Yeah,
to the
I almost got cold chills. I was like, That's why I work out, because I get cold chills when somebody starts talking about food.
I hear you.
Oh man. All right. And Sarah, so just before we jump off here, so how can people get in touch with you? What's the best way for them to find you?
They can go to my website, which is www.hyleecapital.com. They can also find me on LinkedIn, Sarah Miskelly.
All right. And what about for this upcoming summit? Is there somewhere they can find information on that as well?
Yes, so you can go to my website as well. There'll be more information there, and it's going to be in September 21st and 22nd. It's going to be a virtual summit to help alpha women really get into real estate investing and learn passive strategies in particular, because women are busy working, raising kids. They need to get ideas how to invest in real estate that don't take time away from family and career.
Awesome. And if
That's
somebody's
awesome.
interested in investing with Hylee Capital, should again they just go to the website or they reach out to you, or what's the best
Yeah.
way?
Go to the website and there's a contact me. We need to have a conversation because multifamily investing is regulated by the SEC. So
Mhm.
we'd have to hop on a one-on-one call, and then I'm happy to go over the offerings and see if they're a good fit to invest in the assets.
Awesome. There we go. So now you guys can reach out to Sarah if you're interested. This is awesome, Sarah. I really appreciate again, really great interview and appreciate all the tips. So thank you very much for coming on with us.
Yes, thank you both. I love what you're up to, and I can't wait to watch your success as well.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Sarah.
All right.